Hey there, welcome to WMBF News This Week. I'm your host, Michael Maley. You know, we've got a few freshman congressmen from South Carolina, in fact, 4 to be precise. We want to talk with some of them this week on WMBF News This Week, but also get a broader perspective of what it means when we hear that the government could be under a shutdown. When we talk about the unbelievable debt of our nation, we're going to get some perspective right now from potentially 2 congressmen, but one right now joining me is Jeff Duncan. Jeff representing South Carolina District 3. Also, people might know or may not know, an 88 graduate from Clemson University, where you played football for 2.5 years, among 8 years on the State House in South Carolina. We're happy to have you here with us.
That's glad to be here, Michael. Thanks for having us.
Let's put this first in perspective. You know, we're so detached, sadly, many of us, if we're not in the U.S. House of Representatives, it seems, when we hear the government shutdown, when we hear that there's no money out there, that things can be put on hold. Give us the landscape, and we're talking about your first 100 days there to see all this. Give us the landscape at the House of Representatives. What's the feeling and the thought as we look at this?
Well, I think it's important to point out that we're over $14 trillion in debt. We spent this year over $1.5 trillion more than we're bringing in as a nation. This is the 3rd year in a row that the nation has spent in excess of $1 trillion more than it's spent. And I'm using a trillion with a T. That's a lot of money. And so we've gone through a spending resolution several times during this first 100 days, and a lot of us felt like the government needs to be shrunk. The size and scope of government needs to be shrunk. We need to cut government spending, and we wanted to see much larger cuts than what ultimately ended up being $38 billion.
Right. Do you feel like we're at least headed in the right direction? Is there some positivity to be taken from this?
Well, it's optimistic. We passed a budget Friday before we had the Easter break in Constituent Work Week. We passed the budget crafted by Paul Ryan. Mick Mulvaney from South Carolina serves on that budget committee. And what it does is it changes that trajectory for spending and gets us a plan to prosperity, is what they call it, a path to prosperity. And it says that in 14 years, we're going to have surpluses again, and we're going to not have deficit spending, and we're going to start paying back the debt. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to solve this problem overnight.
Do you feel like, do your constituents and people here in South Carolina, whether it's the Grand Strand and PD or in your District 3, do they get the importance of not putting an end to, or not chipping away at this $1 trillion debt, $14 trillion debt? Do they get the importance of it? Do we understand how it matters to us here at home?
Well, I mean, who can fathom what $14 trillion is? You know, there's a lot of graphics out there. You can Google that number and see how large it really is. But at the end of the day, it is a enormous number. We're not going to pay all that back in 1 year.
Right.
And but we need to make sure that the future for our children, our grandchildren, is secure, and it's free from debt, doubt, and despair, that there is a plan to pay back debt. Right now, every household in the country is saddled with over $120,000 in debt. That's their share. It's over $40,000 per individual in this country. And so we've got to make some significant changes to how we govern and what we're spending money on. You know, I'll just tell you, I passed or filed a piece of legislation that would recreate the Byrd Committee. From 1941 to 1974, a committee was called an Anti-Appropriations Committee. It looked at all government spending and really kept government growth in check and really built surpluses to pay back debt. We want to recreate that. Orrin Hatch from Utah has filed a bill in the Senate, and it's now called the Hatch-Duncan bill, and we'll see how that goes.
Let's talk a little bit more on the local front then in South Carolina. Of course, Boeing, a huge industry in the Charleston district. Also talking about BMW. Many people saw in the Super Bowl commercial BMW X3s, the vehicles made only in South Carolina of anywhere in the world. Do you think locally on the state level we're making impacts here on the industrial front, or do we still have a long ways to go?
Well, we are making impacts, but when you see the National Labor Relations Board sue a private company, which they're suing Boeing over locating in South Carolina because we're a right-to-work state, federal government needs to get involved because that is un-American. Boeing made a business decision to come to South Carolina. We're the beneficiary of that. I think it's wrong for the National Labor Relations Board to file suit. They've not only sued Boeing, they've also sued South Carolina in a totally separate issue dealing with the right to a secret ballot with regard to union elections. So we've got 2 things going on where the federal government, I think, has overstepped its bounds when it comes to states' rights and what the state should do.
What do you foresee coming out of this then? This lawsuit, this pending lawsuit? I know Governor Nikki Haley saying we're not going to be strong-armed here. We're going to take this seriously.
Exactly. Alan Wilson's filed the challenge to the NLRB with regard to the right to a secret ballot, and now we have the Boeing issue, and the state's going to step up and do what they can from a state standpoint. But Boeing has a very strong position in this. They've made a business decision to affect their bottom line, to affect shareholder value and return dividends.
Right.
And it's going to be interesting. If NLRB happens to win this suit, it will change the right to work laws in this nation, and that's wrong.
You're right. We're taking a look at video there of Boeing and of course the huge plant in Charleston. Talk about BMW a little bit. Some growth there that we've seen as well too.
Oh yeah, they've continued to expand since they located here, and heard somewhere this week that the vehicle you mentioned that they're producing up there has exceeded expectations with the number of vehicles that have been sold. It's a very, very popular vehicle around the world. So we're excited to have BMW. My counties in the 3rd District are recipients of subsidiary businesses that support BMW and provide products and services to BMW. And so it's not only a localized, Boeing won't be a localized business. You'll see businesses located all over South Carolina that support Boeing just like they support BMW.
Excellent. And again, looking at hiring in Greer, I think from maybe not too long ago, so there is definitely growth there. Again, your 10 counties, do you feel the impact of really any industry?
Yeah, we have First Quality, which is a paper plant just located there. We're seeing more and more new businesses. I have spent the last 2 weeks really touring around the district, a number of plant tours. One plant that makes pacemakers, very innovative. They walked us down a hall where they have patents, and the whole hallway was lined with patents that company and their employees have gotten. And so it's really neat to see that kind of innovation, that kind of work ethic in this state.
Excellent. Okay. Congressman Jeff Duncan, District 3, thanks for being here. We're not going to let you go yet. We're going to also invite Congressman Tim Scott of District 1. As we come back, we're going to talk a lot more about freshmen in the U.S. representatives representing South Carolina and how they're impacting the state and